Hello and welcome to True Audio Files, where we're going to go over Let It Be. As you've probably seen in one of my previous videos, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that it's definitely one of my top 5 favorite Beatles records, and definitely because of that, because the Beatles are one of my favorite bands, it's one of my favorite albums of all time. So I'm going to go over several different versions that I own. I tried to do kind of a A/B comparison as well as I can between the new remix and some of what are considered the better sounding versions of Let It Be. I unfortunately don't have an original UK, so I'm a little bit of a loss there, but I have one that is pretty close. So I think first things first, let me go over the versions of Let It Be that I kind of did a comparison with versus the new remix. So first one, one of the ones I'd have here is, this is a copy from the UK BC13 box set, otherwise kind of known as the BC13 box set, or the blue box set. It's sometimes referred to as. And I can show you what I'm talking about, so maybe some of you will know what I'm talking about better by showing you this. So it basically came from this box set. This is the UK version. I think there's a Japanese, there's a Netherlands, there might be a US, but I'm not 100% certain of that. I don't think so, but basically this is the UK version. And it's in very, very good condition. And is... At least, I haven't checked recently because there has been, so I may not be saying something accurate here because the prices of vinyl have gone up so much in most recent times, but that's been a pretty affordable box. I mean, last I checked, and it's probably more than this now, but it was going for somewhere in the vicinity of a $300 range, so, and very well worth it by many people's standards. Very close to the best sounding stereo versions of all of the records that are in that box. So, anyways, next one I tried is an early Japanese pressing of it. I want to say this is like early to mid 70s. I don't remember exactly. I want to say like I'm wanting to say it's like 73, 75 era. So, got that right there. Then you may not recognize this unless you have the box set, but this is from the Mofi box set. This is actually a picture of the master tape that was used to cut Let It Be. So this is the Let It Be version from the Mofi box set. I also had the standalone version, but I traded it in to get the box set. So those are the three that are probably most prominently known as the better sounding versions, and you know, besides the original UK version. I also have an early, if not first, US pressing, but I didn't listen to that one just because I know many people would dispute the sound quality on that one as being one of the better ones. So, and that might be the case with one of the ones that I've listened to, and you'll when I did the A/B comparison, and I'll talk a little bit about more of that later. But anyways, the next one that I compared is Let It Be Naked. Not really a fair comparison though, and so I'm not really gonna talk about this one a lot in this comparison because the mixes and version is just so drastically different than the original that it's just not possible to do a fair comparison. I mean, if I was saying which mix I like better, you could probably do it that way, but this is more about the sound quality and not the mix per se. Obviously, mix has a little bit to do with it, but and then, you know, just want to kind of show this, and I'll go maybe a little bit more in detail about the box itself later, but this is, I got the 5 LP box set that also has all the outtakes, the Glenn Johns remixes, and, you know, all the EP and things like that on it as well, and plus an awesome book. So, basically how I did the comparisons was, the first thing I did is I listened to the remix all the way through first before I did anything. Kind of did that just to kind of get an idea of which songs I think would be the best to do a shootout with, because it's hard to do a shootout with every single song on the record, just because you know, listening memories tends to fade, and you really need to kind of go track by track, and in some cases do little bits at a time, just back and forth to kind of get a gist for what you're doing. So I basically decided to do Let It Be, Long and Winding Road, and I Got a Feeling, because I thought those were a good mix of songs that not only had a lot of stuff going on in them, but also maybe ones that were a little bit less things going on on them. So with I've Got a Feeling. So overall, when I did this, I think the biggest thing that I noticed that jumped out at me is, you know, the new remix definitely sounds good. If I had to nitpick at all, it definitely doesn't seem to have the soundstage depth that pretty much all the other ones have. But I think I like the EQ overall on it more than most of the other ones. All of the other ones had their own special uniqueness and parts that I really liked, but I would say the new remix definitely, I think from an EQ perspective, probably had the best balance of the bunch. Definitely had the best clarity of the bunch, but not necessarily the best of all of them, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail now. You know, the one thing that definitely jumped out at me is the mix was definitely, there were some subtle differences and not so subtle differences. Things like, it's hard to hear if the piano is there in Long and Winding Road. It's definitely kind of lost in the mix if it's there in the original mix, where it's definitely noticeable on the remix. It is kind of a little left of center on the remix. And then on Let It Be, the piano on the regular mix, the piano's dead center, where it's kind of left of center, if I'm not mistaken, as well, on the remix. So some subtle differences like that. But overall, that's kind of my gist of the remix. As far as the Mofi, I think, you know, it definitely had the kind of, you know, infamous smiley face EQ to a certain extent. You know, they had some great deep bass. It definitely had some higher highs. It's not cut as loud, so that is one thing that you notice right off the bat. I definitely had to crank the volume a little bit more on the Mofi. One thing that really stood out to me on all three tracks that really I noticed quite a bit was it definitely seemed to have a little bit more air, for lack of a better word. You know, it had more, again, for lack of a better word, space between the instruments and the vocals in comparison to all the other versions. And not that any of them were bad per se, because they all were pretty good. But that's really what jumped out to me most, is, you know, it definitely had a decent clarity to it. It definitely seemed to have that more airiness to it, and I don't know if that's because there was more treble there or not, but it was definitely something that I noticed when I listened to that record and compared it to all the other versions. So that's, in a nutshell, the Mofi. When it comes to the BC13, the UK BC13 Blue Box version, that one definitely had the punchiest of sound when it comes to the EQ perspective. And, you know, it had a good clarity to it. I mean, one thing that I think I noticed on it is, especially on Let It Be, is that it seems like the horn section maybe sounded a little bit clearer on it. Not a lot, but a little tiny bit clearer in comparison to the Mofi. And the sound was a little bit more balanced, maybe not quite as warm as the remix, but maybe a little bit more balanced than the Mofi. And I mean, overall, it was a great version, and I would be very happy with that one if that's the only one I had. And it's definitely got some advantages. Like I said, that punchiness was definitely really good. Like I said, I think I liked the horn section a little bit more on the on Let It Be, on the BC13 box set version, but you know, it's just one of those things. So now on to the Japanese. Japanese, as usual, because of the type of vinyl they used, was clean and clear. In terms of, I'm sorry, it was, you know, a lot less, I shouldn't say a lot less, but it definitely had very little surface noise on it. I would say it kind of fell somewhere in between the Mofi and the BC13 box set in terms of its EQ. You know, one thing I noticed is that it definitely had a little bit of more hiss on it. So, you know, that's very possible that it was a later generation copy of the master tapes that they used to cut that one. So that's very possible that's why that did that. And the other reason that it leads me to believe that it was a later generation copy of the master was, especially on Long and Winding Road, it was clear on this because at least on the original mix, you know, so Mofi BC13 Japanese, is that the vocals are almost to the point where they get drowned out a little bit by the horn and string section. And because of the what appears to be a later generation copy tape on the Japanese, and the fact that it's got less treble than... It definitely had a little bit less treble than the Mofi, and actually even maybe the BC13. Although I'm not sure. The BC13 and it were close neck and neck. I think it was more of... Just because of the generation of tape, it definitely seemed a little more muffled. So, and that was most evident in Long and Winding Road. When the strings and the horn section came in, the voice almost got lost. It was very hard to hear, and it wasn't clear and clean and as audible as it was on all the other versions. So I would definitely say of the 4 versions, take out Naked, it was probably my least favorite, but still very good. And then it came to Let It Be Naked, where I did A-B comparisons for the first couple of tracks, and I just got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore because there were just so many differences. I mean, it definitely, the vocals, I will say though, on Let It Be Naked, you know, the vocals stand out quite a bit. It sounds like they're much louder. The drums seemed a lot more forward, if you will. So, and obviously it's going to be a more raw feel and sound to it because a little bit less echo, you know, no horns or string sections, things like that. So, but from now on, I'm probably not going to discuss the Naked version just because it's not, in my opinion, something that you can even compare. It's just so different in comparison to the other 4. So, I think that's kind of the gist of it. I would say, as usual on these debates, there's no clear-cut winner. I would say, you know, if you're looking for a version of the album that, you know, you're looking for like audiophile level space between instruments and airiness to it and things like that, you're probably going to want the Mofi. You know, if you can live with, you know, kind of a little bit of a scooped out mid sound, especially a little bit in the mid bass, that's the drawback you're going to have with that one. I think, you know, a good middle ground one for sure is the BC13 version. So if you have that copy, that is just an awesome copy. I would say overall, though, you know, when you're talking about the new remix, it's definitely worth picking up because there's some subtle differences that I really liked. Like I talked about the couple piano variances, and I think overall it sounds good, and it's got a decent soundstage. It's maybe not as deep as the other ones that I demoed, but it was still really good. And you know, when I first put that on, and it was the first one I listened to before doing any A/B comparisons, I thought it sounded great. And it didn't really, you know, it really didn't dawn on me until after I started doing the back and forth A/B comparisons that there was some difference in that soundstage depth. It wasn't dramatic, but it's noticeable, especially on a decent system. You know, if you're in the right spot and, you know, then that sweet spot and your speakers are set up properly, so on and so forth. It's definitely something that's noticeable. So that was my take on the mixes and the versions of the box of them. So I think the box set, or I should say that I'd say the new remix is definitely worth picking up if you're a fan of the album, because there are some nice little changes to it, and I think they did a great job overall. When it comes to the box set, you've probably already seen a bunch of unboxings and things like that if you're a fan of this album and you really wanted to kind of check out what people thought about the new box. But, you know, it's really great. The book is awesome. There's a lot of detail information, some great pictures. Overall, I think they did just a phenomenal job on this. The CD box set is definitely worth grabbing if you're into digital, just because it's got that surround sound version of the album, which I think is really awesome too. They do a great job. It's kind of a subtle thing. There's no super crazy effects going on in the rear channels and things like that. They respectfully, you know, just gave it kind of a wider, deeper sound stage by putting stuff behind you and echo and things like that to kind of make you feel like you were in the room or the area where it was recorded. But, you know, this is the record itself for the remix, I should say, of Let It Be. This is basically the outtakes and rehearsals and Apple Jams and things like that, with some more pictures on the front, or the middle, I should say. And then I really enjoyed the Glyn Johns remixes. They're kind of cool. This is, you know, from what I understand, these were kind of the early thoughts on what they were going to do if they were to release this as an album instead of Let It Be. You know, it was going to be called Get Back, and it's basically going to have a lot of banter between the guys, and then a cover or two, and just overall some cool performances. So, and then there's the EP, which basically had a couple of 1970s Glyn John mixes and a couple of remixes on some of the singles. I know that a lot of people complained about the fact that there was an EP, and especially when it came to the CD version of it. And my take is, it's not really it doesn't add a lot to the cost to the CD box set, and I don't think it added to the retail cost of the box set to have that, I guess, fourth disc or whatever it was, or fifth disc. I think they just wanted to have that continuity spread out the way they felt that the album should be experienced, or the box set should be experienced. And I don't have a problem with the way they did that. And I don't really understand I sort of understand, you know, why should you have 4 songs on one CD when you can add them into the other CDs. But again, I think it was just to keep that continuity and kind of keep that experience going on it. So overall, what I'd say is, depending on my mood, you know, I would say I definitely can go back and forth between the new remix, the Mofi, and the BC13. You know, I would say probably my go-tos would possibly be the BC13 and the remix, though, with the remix probably edging it out slightly, just because, you know, unless I'm really wanting to get that deeper sound stage when I'm listening to it, and that's really rare, but it does happen, then I would probably reach out to the BC13 or the Mofi. But I think the new remix is definitely worth picking up. I think it sounds good. I know a lot of people that feel that it's the best remix of all the remixes that have been done. And for some, that's not saying much, I know. But I think it's a great option, and I think it's a great pickup, and it's worthy of purchasing, whether you buy the single record or CD remix, or you buy the box set. I really like the box set. I think having the Glyn Johns remixes and then having those rehearsals and the outtakes and things like that are well worth the extra money. And I think the book is really good. I've heard others say that it's probably the best book of the books that come in the reissues, just because it gives you lots of details of specifically what was going on in that time, when it was a tumultuous time for the Beatles because they were getting ready to break up, even though they may not have known it. But, you know, it's just one of those things that it's great to have that documentation that's deeper than what you got on all the other box sets. So that's my take. I think the new box set's worth picking up. The new remix, if you just buy the single album, is worth picking up, and it definitely holds its own against all the other ones. So that's my story. I would love to hear your feedback. Do you have the new remix, or do you have the new box set? I want to hear what your thoughts are on it. And let me know if you know of any other records besides the original UK Let It Be that will sound maybe even better than the ones that I covered here. But please leave your comments below. Hit that like button if you liked the video. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my videos. And hit that alert bell to let you know when my new videos come out. Also, I have the social media pages, and now that I'm back from my business trip, I plan on spending a little bit more time on there now that I've gotten myself caught back up from the trip that I took. And I hope to talk to you guys and see you guys on the social media pages that are linked below. So that's everything I've got for today. I hope you have a great one, everyone.